Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. A rose-scented Santa Claus. Mrs. Claus doesn't bake cookies. She doesn't prepare any dessert at all, for that matter. Her husband eats enough cookies to last him 1 year on his journey around the globe. Instead, she cracks 5 eggs, 3 for him, 2 for her, spreads butter on toast, tosses a bowl of fruit for them to share, and prepares her husband's favorite, a mug of coffee with frothed reindeer milk and candy cane crumbles on top. It always gives him a nice boost before the annual Christmas soiree, which is hosted by the elves, forever adorers, kiss-asses, another might say, of the man in the red suit. This cup of joe will definitely give him a kick. The clock reads 5:35 a.m. He should be arriving soon, no later than 6, she hopes. If he's on time, their Christmas tradition can go on as usual. In the first 25 years of their marriage, she'd hear the reindeer and their jingling bells land on their cottage's immense sleighway at 6 on the dot. For the last 8 years, he was always 10, 20, even 30 minutes late. Old age, explained the elder elf through the years. She scoffed openly at his comment. 65 was not that old. Last year, Mr. Claus arrived an hour late due to a highly rare reindeer injury. Plight, the Rudolph of the group. There were others with noses to guide the way, but Rudolph was the original, had broken a leg. Before he landed, Mrs. Claus was so distraught by her husband's recurring tardiness that she'd thrown the entire breakfast in the trash and dumped the coffee in the sink. 5:45 now. She should soon be hearing Santa's ho 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 as he slows his sleigh in the sky. She doesn't. But her anger is now water underneath a frozen layer of cool indifference. She grabs the coffee pot and pours 2 cups now, prepares his, then lays it on the pine tree-shaped coaster. 5:50. 6:01. 6:01. She waits at the table. At 6:25, Santa Claus lands. From inside, she hears the elves cheering, clapping, celebrating. No doubt they're all wearing their best elf suits, midnight black and made of pure wool, ready for the party that starts in 45 minutes. Mrs. Claus stopped going out to greet her husband 3 years ago. Old age and whatnot, she told the elder elf with a stiff, sweet smile, whose reply was merely an awkward smile and hesitant nod. Mrs. Claus waits at the circular wooden table on the chair that faces the door of their small cottage. Just a minute later, better to walk past those elves, lest they talk your ear off. The door opens, and in walks the man of the hour. Noel, known to her and some close friends, smiles. She knows what he's going to say next, because it's the same thing he says every year. Mrs. Claus deepens and roughens her voice to imitate her husband as he says, "I can't wait to shave this damn thing off." Noel laughs, and she does too. She still does love this man very much. Nothing, no one, could ever snatch that feeling away from her. Noel loves being Santa. She still remembers the pride on his face, mixed with shock and sudden nerves, when the elf jury chose him for the task. This was way back when he was Noel Fable, and she, Winterfrost, back when they'd only stolen a kiss or two and were too shy to hold hands in public. She'd never imagined she'd be Mrs. Claus, and certainly never thought about how their lives could look 28 years later. They selected him just 1 hour after Nick Claus had passed away at 75. It was, and had to be, a swift process. She'd wondered what it'd feel like if her husband died, and just 60 minutes later, people were lining up to replace him. She also thought about who it'd be. Perhaps Elliot Ryder, the young man who'd fixed up Plight's leg last year. She quite liked Elliot. He was the only one who was honest with her and told her that the only reason Plight would injure his leg, the others left unscathed, would be because he didn't want to land on a certain roof. Despite popular belief, reindeer are not loyal to the man with the bag himself, but rather the cause of Christmas itself. In fact, she too might say that she was dedicated to the cause, if need be. So why wouldn't he want to land? Elliot had asked her. She'd merely shrugged, because that was none of his business. She'd be replaced too, of course. If the new Santa had a honey, then it'd happen immediately. If he was single and ready to jingle, then later. But she'd be stripped of the name Claus and forced to move on. At least she'd get to keep their home and have a comfortable place to grieve. It was a quick and cruel but necessary procedure. Christmas didn't wait for anybody, and the North Pole was legally required to meet those children's demands. "Come sit, my love," Mrs. Claus says, patting the seat of the empty chair beside her. Noel obeys and moves closer to her. Before sitting, he leans in and gives her a sweet kiss on the cheek. The first time that Mrs. Claus smelled roses off his puffy white beard, she didn't question it. The third time, it had made her eyebrows furrow, but they'd had breakfast, and she'd moved on. The fourth time, suspicion came. Only confirmation followed in the next years. A perfume that didn't belong to her, that didn't actually exist on the North Pole at all, where there were only cinnamon, hot chocolate, pine, and other related scents. The tardiness and the incident last year only added to the pile of evidence. He threw in the logs and the kindling. Add a flame, and what else could you get but a fire? The scent now makes her knuckles turn white as snow against the mug's handle. My favorite part of the day, Noel says as he finally sits. He reaches for the coffee cup, and Mrs. Claus only stares with a smile that looks like a sticker someone threw on her face and stuck. It doesn't take one sip. He tells her about his night, skipping over certain details she imagines. Not that she wants to know. And together, they eat. She finds that she has no trouble swallowing the eggs, chewing on the toast, even sipping her coffee. Not even when Noel starts slurring his words while talking about the best cookie of the night. She places the mug down with a soft thump as the slurs become choking sounds. She notices drops of milk on his mustache then. He looks at her with a confused expression, and those still gloved hands go to his neck. But Mrs. Claus doesn't move. Not even when he calls out for a name that is not her own. The smell of roses is still fresh under her nose when Mr. Claus starts turning purple. Santa falls off the chair, and Mrs. Claus, like any good wife, screams and calls for help. The midnight ride. It was a dark night, one of those without any stars to look at, and a dark moon. Not even the universe was interested in what was about to happen. There was no spotlight over me, nor a guiding light to help me escape. As I ran to my car, one of my heels broke, and I twisted my ankle. I took out the shoes and limped to the door while looking for the keys in my purse. Damn big fancy bags. This whole scenario would have been much easier with jeans and sneakers. But that was not something I could change, and dreaming about better times would not help me either. My hands were trembling, and I was about to empty the bag when I touched the furry pom-pom I had attached to my keychain days before. I took out the keys, opened the door, and once I was inside, I locked the car. The street was empty. No one was screaming my name or running after me, and I took a deep breath before starting the motor. When I passed the campus gates, I felt light and smiled. I was free, and I felt happy. Before entering the highway, I stopped at the last traffic light and adjusted the mirror. I could not even remember the last time I touched it. And then, when I lowered it, I saw them smiling at me and waving. I tried to open the door. I wanted to jump out, but Amir moved his arm to my neck and pinned me to my seat. Ezra moved to the front slowly, while I struggled to move or breathe. Suddenly, everything hurt, and I did the only thing I could. I pushed the gas pedal with my foot, and my ankle cracked, making the pain even worse. Ezra took the wheel, while I tried to free myself from the strangling arm. But Amir whispered in my ear, "This will happen, whether you like it or not. I gave you the choice." His teeth sank into my neck, and as the pressure increased in my skin and the wound started to burn, I felt my life running away from me. The blood spilled over my white dress, forming stains that seemed broken rose petals. And shortly after, my head fell on Ezra's lap, and the car stopped in the middle of the highway. "Move her," said Amir. And Ezra grabbed my body and threw it to the back seat like I was weightless. Amir sat in the driver's seat, and once Ezra sat by his side, the car started again. I could barely breathe. The only thought in my mind was how much blood I had lost, and how much more was now running down the leather I was lying in. I had no more pain, but I was starting to feel cold. And although I wanted desperately to scream and cry, I just couldn't. He betrayed me, I thought. He's helping him. I heard the sound of the radio buzzing, and then the music. Sympathy for the devil. Really? I thought, and I felt like laughing, though I couldn't. Would he now take the end of his sleeves and take them out of his jacket? What would the 16-year-old me have done in this situation? I should have been given an option and not forced into this. The sun was rising when I woke up. Everything around me was flooded with orange light, and I felt the warmth as the first rays touched my skin. I did not want to open my eyes fully, but I understood I was not gone, at least not completely, which meant I still had the right to see the sun again. It burned at first, though. Everything hurt, but I did not mind. It was like something else was pushing for me, and my body did not belong to me anymore. I was still in the back of the car, and my dress and the seat were drenched in red. My blood. How had I lost so much blood? Why was I awake? I raised my head, and my neck cracked. I never liked that sound, but that day, it was scarier than ever. The light passing through the front window blinded me for a second, but when I got used to it, I saw someone sitting in the passenger seat. I opened my mouth, but the words did not come out. Ezra, I thought, convinced that I still had that power on me, that he would listen to my thoughts, that he would attend my command if Amir were far away from us. Ezra, please. But he did not turn. I moved my arm. I wanted to sit, but I couldn't. My limbs failed me, and the only thing I managed was to grab his arm and fall to the car floor. He moved then, but not the way I expected. I was still holding his sleeve when I saw the blood crossing his arm, the wound in his neck, and his eyes opened, lost, lifeless. Then, someone opened the door, grabbed me by the ankles, and dragged me out of the car. I felt the pain once more, like someone was stabbing me with those expensive shoes I had bought weeks before. When my head hit the floor, I closed my eyes. I did not want to see what was about to happen. "You complain too much," said Amir, though I knew I was the only one who could hear him. There he was, again, inside my head. "You are such a romantic," he continued. He was not helpful, no matter how much you tried to make him. He was not worthy. He helped you, I thought. He was just a pretty puppet. And the puppets are good to play. I still had my eyes closed and felt a tear running down my face. "He'll kill me. This all will pass," I thought. "Don't be ridiculous," I heard. "We have work to do. I don't like to waste talent, tama, or blood. You should know that about me already." After getting rid of Ezra, he lifted my body as if I were a little rag doll and sat me in the passenger seat. The leather was sticky and smelled funny, but sweet. "You'll recover soon. Don't worry. You'll be buying new shoes in no time," he said, as he started the car and put on his sunglasses. The car moved away, and as the sunlight warmed my face, I knew I'd have to come up with a better plan to leave that life, that work, and that man. Keep going. Suddenly, I looked up. Was I asleep? Had I forgotten my flight? Everyone around me seemed nervous, or so it seemed to me. I immediately reached for my robotic purse. It's always a good thing to carry on such a journey. Its fingerprint scanner still worked. I looked across the way at the panini shop, at which point there was a thunderous roar in my belly. Suddenly, the sound of a plane landing. "Attention customers, flight boo, boo, boo to San Francisco, now boarding." Aha, I've caught you. I immediately grabbed at anything I could. Things that I was pretty sure were mine, or that would be nice to own in any case. As we all stumbled toward the flight gate with our boarding pass, it became obvious that we weren't all going to get the window seat in the cockpit. Someone was going to have to fly the plane. "You can handle this, young Hopite," I said to myself. "Remember your training, yon grasshopper." I walked up to the gate like a supermodel doing her taxes. It wasn't easy being this funky. The airport attendant shot me a glance as I approached, then looked back down at his screens. "My eyes are up here. Buddy, may I help you, miss?" "Yes. Well, I would like to get on the plane." "Which plane?" "That one. The one at the end of the gate." "There is no other plane. Miss, you have to be specific. It's my first day on the job." I looked at him with a deep sense of pity, not wanting to shake anything up. He had the look of an Ohio school teacher who had gotten lost after an all-night kegger. I gingerly handed him my ticket. "Are you sure you're in the right airport?" "The right airport? Yes. Yes, yes, you're sure? Or yes, you're agreeing with me? Yes, I'm sure that I am agreeing with you. Yes, this is the right airport. I'm sure of it. I majored in airports in college. Okay, take your boarding pass over here and get on that plane over there if you need further instruction. Okay, I'm good. Let's go. I subsequently made it to the boarding window. Miss Bakersfield, said the boarding attendant, with the gigantic glasses. Yes? You've been bumped up to first class. Jesus, couldn't have thought of a better ending than that. I kissed my ticket and pressed it to the sky. My bags and body armor hanging off me like the tattered rags of a battered Superman. Where is first class? In the back? I asked in pure euphoria. On the plane. I got on the plane. And what did I see? First class was amazing. The people here were so jelly of my success that I could barely contain myself. I sat next to a young, old gentleman reading a financial newspaper. Soon enough, we went down the runway, and then we all collectively hopped into the air at once, hurling the 100-ton behemoth into space. As soon as we struck the atmosphere, I got chatty and looked to my left, only to find that the newspaper, cemented to my compatriot's face, had now been surgically removed. Hello? I said. I'm Miss Bakersfield. So they say. So who says? I've got no time for questions. I'm a very busy man. Busy doing what? Busy reading newspapers. You know that every time a newspaper is printed, a priest starves to death in Bangladesh? Is that in the Guinness Book? It should be. Where are you going? Who said, I need to be going anywhere? You're the one who's going away. Forgive my impetuosity. We are both hurtling through space at the speed of light. I figured you would be going somewhere. It's all in the mind. Yes, sir. I agree. It truly is in the mind. Do you buy timeshares? Sorry, I don't. I was asking because I wanted to buy one for myself. Really? That's interesting. Yes. I made my first $1,000 selling timeshares in old Italy. And then Jesus was crucified. He let out an uproarious laugh that could not be mistaken for sarcasm, traveling at this speed. So, I said, not having understood my place in the scheme of life. Nurse, he said. I'm not a nurse, said the flight attendant as she walked by. What can I get for you? Could you bring me my hunting knife? Yes, right away. Hunting knife? I said. Yes, he said. I like to flick my knife when I get nervous. The flight attendant went toward the cockpit and then knocked on the door, using a secret knock that only people with knives understood. Suddenly, the door opened, and there stood the co-pilot. He spoke with her a while, and then handed her what looked, from a distance, to be a small child wrapped in leather. As she dragged it back to where we were, I almost expected it to start singing its ABCs, until she walked over to me, lugged it over my lap, and handed it to the man who never went anywhere. He sat there with the small, sharp, metallic toddler in his hand, flicking the edge of the blade. Each flicking was a bullet to my eardrum, but I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. Thank God my purse was robotic. Or was it really? The man who never went anywhere flicked his blade a few more times. Have you ever bought a hotel? I'm allergic. I didn't say that. I said, did you ever buy a hotel? Well, I am in first class. Now that's a classy response. I like you. You seem to be so comfortable. Well, first class does that to a lady. We flew for hours. The man who went nowhere continually flicked his blade while I tried to figure out the lock on my robotic purse. As we flew, the sunlight of 1,000 dances went through the cockpit. We were free. Little Men, January 1985. Somewhere over the... You were 1,000 miles into the Atlantic when the aircraft rutted violently against your controls. Barely a shiver in the airframe at first, like a deep sigh running through the metal bones of the 777, then unloading at once. You felt it beneath your hands, fingers curled around the yoke, a pulse of tension radiating from your own chest. And you thought that perhaps the bottom of the ocean was where you belonged. There was a darkness there, a pressure so strong it would stop your body from behaving like a biological machine and turn it into a mangled physics experiment. The same coexisted inside you, where your heart was splintered, half of it belonging to your mother and half of it to Cammy. A darkness you couldn't smooth away. Somewhere back there, among the rows of passengers dozing, sighing, and flipping through their lives, he was sitting. Your father, a man you'd never truly seen. Not beyond the stories your mother whispered in moments of quiet fury. A man who had given you nothing but a sickness that curled in your gut when you remembered where you came from. The man whose rage marked you. You didn't know his seat number, didn't want to know. The knowledge that he existed in your cabin, breathing your air, was enough to make a grown man sick. And you thought you knew that if he walked up to the cockpit door, if he knocked, if he leaned in with some pathetic excuse or a father's smirk, you would open the door and wrap your hands around his throat. You'd feel his pulse flutter against your fingers, fragile and real, and you would squeeze. You let autopilot hold the course. Let the gentle hum of the engines seep into your bones, pretending for a moment you were something better than what he left behind. A clean slate, but there was always a stain, that borrowed darkness, his gift to you. No matter how high you flew, you couldn't outrun it. And then she drifted into your mind, the girl with eyes like sky break, a voice like gentle rain, the girl you had never touched, could never touch, because she was flawless in ways you would never be. She'd smile at you with that easy grace, unaware of the shadows clawing inside you, oblivious to the storm you kept locked behind your ribs. You thought of her seeing you for what you were. The quiet, steady pilot with a monster curled around his heart. If she knew, if she saw even a hint of that darkness, she would recoil. She'd wish you out of the sky, wish your plane would disappear into the ocean without a trace. And maybe she'd be right. The horizon stretched before you, a line you couldn't cross, a future you didn't deserve. You swallowed the air in shallow breaths, felt the press of your father's existence. Outside, the clouds thickened, gray swirling into black, and the gentle tremor of turbulence returned. The seatbelt sign blinked on. You flicked the intercom switch, cleared your throat. Ladies and gentlemen, we're passing through some rough air. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Your father's life was in your hands. All their lives were. You looked at the yoke, the screens, the clouds ahead, and wondered just how far you could fall before the darkness took over. Why was he still alive? How did he deserve to be alive? On what grounds exactly? You could push the controls forward, put the nose into a dive, select full thrust, increase bank angle to 45 degrees, and stall the plane. Keep putting in fatal commands while your FO tries to right the plane until the dual input sound warning starts to ring out through the cockpit. You squeezed your eyes shut just for a moment. The stick trembled beneath your fingers, the aircraft groaning. You loved this plane, and like in any other reciprocal relationship, it not only loved you back, but supported your every decision. You could do it. A simple motion, a nudge of the yoke, the push of a throttle, and gravity would take over. You opened your eyes. Outside, the storm coiled tighter, wind shear slipping along the fuselage. The intercom crackled as your first officer, blissfully unaware of the war inside you, mumbled something about altitude adjustments. You barely heard him. A breath, another. Then the master caution blared. A harsh, shrieking thing. Your FO jerked upright. Jesus, what? Your hands moved, instincts taking over before your mind could finish what it started. The turbulence sharpened. Wind punched the aircraft broadside. The nose dipped. Pitch up, you corrected without thinking. Muscle memory overriding the dark pull at the edge of your mind. The aircraft stabilized, shuddering in the air, and for a moment, all was still. Your FO exhaled, dragging a hand down his face. That was a bad one. You okay? You nodded, throat dry. Yeah, you said, because it wasn't your hands that tried to kill them. It was the storm, at least. That was the lie you would tell yourself. Something in you had hesitated, had listened to the alarms, had heard the raw panic in your FO's voice, had responded like the pilot they had trained you to be. Why had you stopped? Captain, you forced your expression into something normal, professional. The storm was beginning to ease, the worst of it passing. "We'll be clear in a few minutes," you said. "Keep an eye on the readings." He nodded, rubbing his temples. "Didn't think we'd get rocked that hard. Thought for a second we were gonna..." He shook his head. "Never mind." You didn't respond. Instead, you reached for the intercom. Your voice was calm, steady. Everything it should be. "Ladies and gentlemen, the turbulence is subsiding. We'll have a smooth ride the rest of the way. Thank you for your patience." You let go of the button. The lie sat heavy in your mouth because the storm wasn't over. It had only just begun. The unwritten pages. 37 minutes after getting off the Route 19 bus, Bronwyn Miller realized her mistake. The familiar weight against her hip had disappeared because her leather-bound diary, which was her 3-year companion, wasn't there. Her fingers instinctively searched for the familiar worn cover, but discovered just the empty pocket of her oversized cardigan. She abruptly paused on the sidewalk while whispering, "No, no, no," mentally retracing her steps. The last places she visited before reaching the current sidewalk included the coffee shop and the bus stop, followed by the bus ride. She remembered having her diary at the bus stop with her, where she wrote during every wait because it had become her routine. The diary wasn't just any journal. The diary held all her unfiltered thoughts and secrets for 3 years, which she never expressed out loud. This was Bronwyn in her true form, without her deliberate public image. She started running back toward the bus stop, which was 6 blocks away. How likely was it for her diary to remain undisturbed on that bench in a city of 4 million? 0, as it turned out. An elderly woman sat on the bench and fed pigeons, while no leather-bound book appeared in sight. She knew that it was gone and felt a strange emptiness inside. Bronwyn reached the point of thinking the situation wasn't as terrible after 3 days passed. Someone had probably thrown it away. Bronwyn confirmed the transit authority had no records of anyone turning in her diary. Then came the notification. Bronwyn received a phone notification while she was working. A new email with the subject line, "I think this belongs to you?" A link represented the entire email, which lacked any other content. Upon clicking on the link, a basic blog titled "Pages Found" appeared on the web page, showing its first post created earlier that morning. "Sometimes I wonder if anyone would notice if I disappeared. Mom would, obviously. But would she be sad or just inconvenienced? She's spent so many years being disappointed in me that maybe it would be a relief. I think about disappearing a lot lately. Not dying, just vanishing. Starting over somewhere. No one knows the Bronwyn who always messes up." Her heart stopped. She'd written those words just last week, following her argument with her mother. The words matched exactly with her diary entries, which she had written by hand. As she scrolled through the page, she discovered 3 new entries, which contained her personal reflections written during the past month. The content hasn't reached extreme damage yet, but it's personal enough to make her feel exposed. At the bottom of the page was a comment box, and above it, a message. Bronwyn, if you're reading this, comment here. We need to talk about what you wrote on your remaining pages. She didn't sleep that night. She kept refreshing the blog compulsively while watching another entry show up. I had that dream again, where I'm giving my presentation and realize I'm completely naked. Dr. Winters says it's about vulnerability, about my fear of being exposed. How ironic is that? I pay someone $200 an hour to tell me I'm afraid of people seeing who I really am. Maybe she's right, though. I've spent so much energy crafting this competent, put-together version of myself. What would happen if people saw the real mess underneath? After hours of intense deliberation, Bronwyn typed the words, "This is private. Please stop posting my words. What do you want?" The response came within minutes. "Meet me tomorrow, 3 p.m. The bus stop where you left it." Bronwyn arrived at 2:45, her hands shaking. Before going to the meeting, she instructed Martha about her location and insisted that Martha call the authorities if she failed to report back by 3:30. At exactly 3:00, her phone buzzed with another link. "I see you, Bronwyn. I've been watching you for a while now, even before I found your diary. You take this bus every Tuesday and Thursday. Look to your left, at the cafe across the street." Through the cafe window, she could see a figure holding up what appeared to be her diary. Her heart raced as she stood at the curb, until a gap in the traffic opened for her to cross. Bronwyn identified the figure sitting at the window table as she walked closer. "Eliza," she said in disbelief. Bronwyn's quiet marketing co-worker, Eliza Chen, sat down reading Bronwyn's diary. "Why?" was all Bronwyn could manage. Eliza pushed the diary toward her. "I found it. I opened it to find out whose it was. And once I realized it was yours, I should have just returned it. But then I read a bit more." She paused. "You wrote about feeling invisible, about no one really seeing you. So you tracked me down to publish my personal feelings on the internet?" Bronwyn hissed. Her face flushed as she confessed that she knew what she did was wrong. "But I recognized myself in your words. That feeling of being invisible, together with the necessity to hide behind a facade. My intention was to demonstrate that someone truly saw you and listened to what you said." "You thought what? That I'd be grateful?" Bronwyn snatched up her diary and held it close against her body. Eliza didn't know what thoughts she had and looked down. "I've taken the blog down. All the posts are deleted. Your words made me feel connected to you. My whole life, I've felt as though no one would even realize I was gone. What you did was a violation, Bronwyn stated firmly. You had no right. I know. I'm sorry. Eliza spoke once more when Bronwyn began to walk away. There's something else you should know. On page 43, you stated that you haven't encountered anyone who truly understood your feelings. That's not true, Bronwyn. You're not alone. That doesn't make what you did okay. I know, Eliza said quietly. Bronwyn opened her diary to a blank page and started to write as she walked towards the bus stop. Today, I encountered the person who discovered my diary. I discovered that it was Eliza from work who found my diary, rather than a creepy stranger. Eliza expressed her connection with me through the words I wrote. I remain angry, yet feel uneasy about how someone who barely existed to me understood me so well. Eliza mentioned my writing. You possess exceptional writing skills, she remarked. This memory took me back to my creative writing professor during my sophomore year, before I changed my major to business, because my father considered business more practical. These pages represent the sole place where I've openly revealed my desire to write a novel. A week later, Bronwyn found a sealed envelope on her desk with a handwritten note. I understand if you decide never to speak to me again. If you ever do, I must inform you that I have begun writing too. Putting the invisible parts on paper sometimes helps people understand them better. E. That evening, she flipped to page 43 of her diary. I question whether there exists another person who experiences this same sensation of ghosting through their own existence. At times, I feel I could yell in a packed space without anyone listening to me. On Monday, Bronwyn took her usual bus. Eliza occupied the back seat as she wrote notes into her little notebook. Their eyes met briefly before Eliza quickly looked down. Bronwyn took the vacant seat next to Eliza. I got your note. I was sincere when I apologized, Eliza answered, with a voice so faint it was nearly inaudible. What are you writing? Bronwyn asked. Just thoughts. Nothing as eloquent as your words. Your words reveal things that otherwise stay hidden, Eliza resumed. Reading your diary felt as though someone had expressed my inner emotions in words. Bronwyn acknowledged that her actions were still wrong, while showing less anger. I know. After discovering your diary, I started writing my thoughts down myself. The act of writing my thoughts down became helpful after I read your January entry. Writing feels like breathing underwater because you discover air in an environment meant to choke you. Yes, your diary entries reminded me of your desire to write a novel one day. This story is about all the characters you've been imagining since childhood. Bronwyn felt her face flush. Those were private dreams she'd almost forgotten. Eliza said softly, You know that you can do it. Your diary entries read like literature already. The bus came to a halt at its regular destination for Bronwyn. She decided to remain seated instead of exiting as the bus started moving. 6 months later, Bronwyn sat across from Eliza at their regular cafe table by the window. The same table where they'd had their confrontation. Bronwyn declared, "I finished it," while pushing the manuscript toward Eliza across the table. "All thanks to you." Eliza picked up the stack of papers, reading the title page. The Unwritten Pages by Bronwyn Miller. Their initial coffee meetings, which started cautiously, developed into both a genuine friendship and a creative partnership. They gathered every Tuesday evening to write, with Bronwyn working on her novel while Eliza focused on poetry. Bronwyn announced, after taking a sip of her coffee, that she planned to send her manuscript to the literary agent they met at the writer's workshop. Eliza remarked on the strange way things come together. "The moment that brought us together happened because you left your diary on the bus stop." Bronwyn joined in with a playful grin, saying, "You were such a creepy stalker. I prefer to think of myself as the universe's extremely flawed messenger." Eliza's expression grew serious. "What drove me to give you back your diary was something you'd written about your dream to write a novel, but your fear that no one would want to hear your voice. Your diary entry revealed your dream of becoming an author, yet your fear held you back. I came to understand that I was reading the thoughts of an individual who possessed valuable insights, but doubted anyone would listen to them." That night, Bronwyn opened her original diary and flipped to the last page, where she started writing a new entry following her confrontation with Eliza. She went back to read her thoughts from 6 months prior. "I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive her, but today I understood something. The experience of being truly seen can evoke simultaneous feelings of fear and awe." Beneath those words, Bronwyn added, "Today I finished my novel." Sometimes the worst moments in our lives become doorways to the best ones. Sometimes a stranger becomes the friend who helps you find your voice. And sometimes being seen is exactly what you needed all along. She shut the diary softly because she was no longer fearful of its contents or the consequences of someone reading them. The words had served their purpose. They had guided her home to herself. Columbine. Every night, the fog killed scores of us. The city of Metro needed a hero to protect them. And so I rose up and became the super-powered woman to save them all. I am Maverick, named for the city's most usually seen creature of flight. My civilian identity is Cora Neely. When I took up the mantle of the heroic Maverick, I left behind my former mundane life as a citizen to combat crime in all its insidious forms. I usually triumphed, earning the keys to the city. I met more than I expected when I encountered someone called Columbine. Columbine was my arch foe, a foe of extraordinary caliber, if one were afraid of clowns. She was a commedia dell'arte themed supervillain whose motive was to destroy the city of Metro, weaponizing lethal gas in the form of mist in our city every night that killed many inhabitants. Her motive was to eradicate Handcroft Laboratories, an organization responsible for medicine and chemicals vital to Metro's health and progress. One day, I discovered a formidable truth when we battled amid the towering skyscrapers of Metro. I was having a midnight flight when she arrived, indigo-haired with matching lipstick, taunting me with maniacal laughter. Up until this moment, I had yet to meet someone so unhinged and so glaringly dangerous. We would grow close in later years, but that night, the fight was for mutual detest as much as it was about survival. "The birdie's a long way from her nest," she said in a sing-songy voice. Columbine's face was contorted into a grimacing leer behind her clown half-mask. "Metro is mine to protect," I told her. "I hail from the faraway citadel of Celestium, where we have no tolerance for common criminals such as yourself. I dare you to fly, to fight. Come and stop me," she said, firing bullets at me. My wings deflected her shots. I swooped into the air with metallic wings, shedding my trench coat. Once I reached her level, on the rooftop where she stood, I lurched forward, holding her by the neck. She pivoted, slashing at me with an intricate dagger. I dodged the blows, my wings slicing through the air. Columbine freed herself from my wrenching grasp, and we continued our battle, parrying back and forth in a vicious dance of death. She danced a vile ballet throughout the rooftops, acrobatically dodging all of the blades that I slung at her. She stepped forward and cradled my jaw, speaking in a hushed tone. "Look how you're all alone in life, waiting for even more recognition for gift-wrapped victories that you never deserved," she said. "Join me. This wretched city could be ours if you let it." I wrestled myself away, shaking my head at her attempt to seduce me into defeat with her carefully chosen words. Columbine knew my weakness and wasn't afraid to use it against me. "You're wicked scum," I spat out. "Then die alone," she said. Was it true that she was truly insane? "Eeny, meeny, miny, mo," she whispered, bellowing the last word while firing more bullets at me from a vintage hand rifle. I deflected again and surged towards her, slicing her neck with my razor-sharp wing. She coughed, stumbling downward to the street below, feeling something akin to pity that I could not name. I descended and caught her, and we plummeted to the street. Columbine clutched at my collar. I leaned closer. With a trembling hang, she removed her mask to reveal patterns of acid lesions trailing from her forehead to her right jaw. There's something that you should know about Handcroft Labs. They're not the city's saving grace. They held me captive since infancy and experimented on me. They took away the closest thing I had to a father figure, disfigured my face. I'm the villain I am because of Handcroft. Stay far away. I was stunned. The same place that was about to provide an antidote to Columbine's venomous fog was what twisted her into something possibly past saving? Was she right? Unable to shake her words from my head, I flew to the nearest hospital, dropped her at the door, and set out to investigate her claims for myself. Columbine's civilian identity was that of a theatrical drama teacher. One afternoon, I visited her at her school and pleaded with her to cease the toxic nightly mist. She relented with downcast eyes. "What are you really here for?" she asked. "You," I said softly. "I want to make sure that you're all right after. Well, let's forget the homicidal pleasantries. I found out that you're right about Handcroft. Turns out that they're up to more harmful things than just university science projects. So, you believe me?" asked Columbine. "We'll see, but it's a start," I said. "Cora, listen to me. When this thing," she gestured to her mask, "this Columbine thing takes over, I can't control." "No worries," I said, trying to understand her in some way. "This city I used to put on a spectacle pits us against each other. It's outside both of our control." As time went on, we continued our game of fighting and alternately reconciling, with no conclusive winner every time. Sometimes I let her get away. Other times, she purposely ceased to slay me. She was right about Handcroft, so we joined forces to end their schemes forever. Having succeeded, we became more than hero and villain. We were connected by a common goal. Months later, we grew closer, me and Columbine. At one time, I woke up and got out of bed to find that she wasn't in my room anymore. There was a note. "Dear Cora, I can't keep up this charade anymore. I have to go after an enemy of yours on my own. I'm sorry. Columbine Claude XOXO." I wept for hours at losing someone I had fought alongside to save our city. When my tears ceased to fall, there was one thing I knew for certain: that I would hunt Columbine down from every corner of the earth until I found her. My search would continue. Shadow, hounds, endless void out the window. You can hardly tell whether there is some kind of space whizzing past, or trees, or the gullet of some fantastically huge animal. Being able to see the stars helps, but the roof of the car keeps getting in the way. The landscape keeps shifting from open to covered. You think you remember Mom saying you would be driving through some forest soon. You can't sleep. Days in the car, and everything is stiff and sore. A few more hours, they say, like they mean it. I mean, you knew it would be a long trip. Cross country is a long way to go. But staring out a small window at passing scenery that largely doesn't change from state to state is mind-numbingly boring. A flicker in the corner of your eye, but you know better than to turn your head. You might be tired, 3/4 asleep, but you know you aren't seeing things. Your heart speeds up. Your breaths quicken. You strain your peripheral vision to get a better idea of what is running alongside the car. Again, always at night, especially in the darkest places. A nightmare of sleek muscles, open, panting jaws, and long legs ending in what looks like razor-sharp claws, all ebony black, invisible if you looked at it dead on. No discerning features in the blackness. Nothing you could pinpoint to show someone else the demon dogs running next to the car. And yes, dogs. Sometimes it was just one. And how you know it's the same one all the time, you'll never be able to tell. Other times, there are several. Considering their color and tendency to sort of bleed or ooze over each other, it's impossible to tell exactly how many there are at times. They run constantly beside the car, seeming to brush up against it at times. They don't make any noise. You can't tell if they are physical things, though the fact no one else sees them and they disappear in any light says something. Their slavering jaws drip, though it doesn't smear on the glass, nor does their breath fog the windows. They just are. Nothing about them really screams menace, despite how they look. They don't pay attention to the occupants of the car much, don't seem to notice when you try to avoid their eyes. They run, eyes forward, coursing into the night with you. Suddenly, you see one dart off the road into the darker shadows under the trees. The others gather closer to the car, seeming to close ranks and become more alert as they run. You strain your eyes in the darkness, trying to pierce the void of the deepest shadows. What would they be running after? Some kind of prey? Some kind of threat? And a threat to whom? You or them? You slow your breathing as much as you can. Try to tune out the hush of the tires and the air conditioner. You try not to think about smothering your mother for that little snore cough she's doing. She really can't help it. It's just covering up. Was that a noise? A crunch scream in the distance? Damn it, there are too many smaller noises around, covering anything up. You start to pant and sweat, worried about what you did or didn't hear. You keep glancing at the rest of the pack, trying to read their body language. Is that a snarl? Is that one staring off into the woods or ahead of the car? Are they moving closer, more carefully, or picking up speed again and relaxing? An interminable amount of time later, the other shadow hound suddenly bounds out of the blackness ahead, turning sharply to take up his place in the pack again. You scan him, looking for any sign of what happened. Then you laugh at yourself, because how can you tell if a shadow is bleeding or hurt. You relax and start to drift off, finally lulled by the swaying of the car and the shushing of the tires. Your eyes close and you sleep. Weightlessness, briefly, then pain as you slam into the seats in front of you. Breathlessness as your body adjusts from being asleep to awake so abruptly. You scramble upright, or as upright as you can get, trying to get your bearings. The car is twisted around, now facing the woods across from where you were traveling. You can see skid marks, and the front of the car is all banged up, like you hit something. But there's nothing in the road, nothing in front of the vehicle. You check on your parents. They're fine, but look like they got knocked out during the crash. They are both bleeding a bit, but nothing seems serious. You try to gently wake them, but don't want to accidentally hurt them. You look around for your phone, remembering you need to call for help. As soon as your fingers touch it on the floorboard, you feel a growl in your chest. Then you hear the deep grumbling from outside the car. Snapping upright, you look frantically around in front of the car, looking for whatever made that malicious sound. You see nothing until you catch a flicker in the corner of your eye. With dread, you make yourself focus on your peripheral vision, scared to see what is making the sound. It's big. You can almost catch glimpses of scales as it moves, gliding around the light. This one, whatever it is, does seem to have mass. You can see the trees shifting and swaying, like there is a breeze blowing through them. But only as it passes. The others are still as stone. You check quickly around and don't see any of the shadow hounds. Were they scouting for this thing, leading it to you somehow? Did this thing kill them all? Or did they run when it attacked your car? Because you're fairly certain this is what caused the collision. Impossible to tell. You couldn't even tell whether they acknowledged your presence or not on the road, other than as an object to race, a sound, a whistle that turns into a high-pitched giggle, a howl and shriek, all in one. It repeats around the little clearing, growing louder and more melodic, until it stops. Suddenly, you see the hounds lunging and leaping. Trying to keep track of the movement is impossible. You can only catch tiny fragments of glimpses from the corners of your eyes, but you can hear the yips and snarls, the sound of impact from the tussle. Eventually, there is a deeper, pain-filled snarl that rends the air, then crashing and banging through the trees as the high-pitched howl shriek begins again. This time, sounding triumphant. You sit there, breathing slowly as you strain to listen. A huff at the window, a brush of almost fur against that side of the car. You slide your eyes that way to see as much as you can out of the corner. The biggest hound, the one you consider the leader of the pack, stares back at you and slowly blinks. He nods, and you nod back, grateful for the protection. Your parents start to stir and moan, and you remember your phone. You look down to dial 911 and glance back around you as you start to talk to the operator. You can see the pack out there, taking up a defensive perimeter. You sigh and relax, knowing you are safe from any more dangerous shadows. The Alpha stands to the side, taking up an outer perimeter watch. He looks back at the car, knowing that soon it will be time to bond with his mage. She's almost ready. The attack tonight was proof of that. But she is strong. She did not panic, did not scream. She trusted them. He knows they will have a strong bond. He grins fiercely, showing all of his teeth. Yes, they will work nicely together. In-flight meal. Leo was not a fan of flying. Not like this. Sitting quietly with strangers in an enclosed space, like he was back in the classroom. That was one of his ideas of hell. He had many ideas of hell, and very few of heaven. He made sure her was one of the first passengers on the plane. He took his seat with no fuss and no nonsense, and then did his best to weather the storm of humanity around him. He tried the breathing technique his therapist had taught him, and he also tried zoning out. Neither worked. A voice in his head was screaming at him to leave. Anything was better than this. Screw the deal. Just get off the plane and go home. Maybe Jimmy was right. They should buy the Vibe Bar, change its name to something far cooler, and live the simple life. Leo's Bar. Thoughts of the bar helped calm him for a little while, but then he realized that his ambition was taking the concept to places that were far from simple. Leo sighed. Jimmy would make that bar work. He really would. But then Leo would come along, interfere, and fuck it up. And the worst of it was that Jimmy would smile sweetly and let him ruin everything. Sometimes Leo wondered whether he wasn't wired right, that maybe he'd been dropped on his head as a baby, or his mother had had a secret drug habit. Leo was never settled or content. Nothing was ever good enough. Or if it seemed like it was, it soon turned into the brown stuff and stunk to high heaven, meaning Leo had to move onto pastures new before the shit stuck to him, and he was the one stinking the place up. Somehow, he lost himself somewhere in his thoughts and self-absorption, thankful of the respite. Barely taking in the safety briefing, he came to himself as the plane accelerated down the runway, and he was pressed down into his seat as they traveled skyward. He enjoyed this bit, but it also terrified him. There was nothing natural about being propelled into the sky. He tried not to consider the landing. It was the landing that could kill you. Hit the ground hard enough, and it was all over. He blew out a breath and closed his eyes. He kept them closed as he mulled the deal. This was the big time. Once he'd done this deal, he'd be a different animal, and the Vibe Bar would be far beneath him. He was a player now. Things were on the change, and people better take note. They would have to take note. He'd make sure of it. "Drink, sir?" The question fazed him, but he quickly returned to himself, ordering a bourbon, then making it a double. As he poured his drink into the crappy plastic cup, he tuned into the interaction between the air hostess and the passenger sat next to him. The voice was what caught his attention. There was no mistaking the owner of that voice. If Leo were to turn and gawp at the woman next to him, he knew that he would find her attractive. Maybe too attractive. Leo's measure of too attractive was not misogynistic. He applied the same rule to man and beast alike. Beautiful people could be really up themselves and manage to be a pain in the ass at the same time. Leo had experienced this and had no time for it. Mostly, he had no time for it. There was always room for exceptions, and she turned out to be yet another of the exceptions. "Hey," he said as he turned to greet her. "I'm Leo." She smiled and nodded. "I'm Grace." "Nice name," he told her. And for once, he thought he might mean it. There followed a silence that could have been awkward, but instead was filled with anticipation, or at least was as far as Leo was concerned. "I don't usually," he began, but trailed off as both the words and the sentiment felt off kilter. "I bet that's what you say to all the girls you sit next to on a plane," she said, with a hint of humor in her voice. That voice, there was something cathartic about it. Not only that, her very presence was doing something to him. Some things. He was regressing. A young boy around the babysitter. A pretender to a throne he never thought he would ever sit on. His body was fizzing, and his brain was spinning so that he couldn't think straight. "So Leo," she said, "what is it that you do?" That last word was heavy with meaning, but he could not discern it. "I'm a businessman," he replied. "The problem with the dog-eat-dog world of business is you have to piss a few people to get anywhere. Am I right?" She was smiling. He nodded. "Seems impossible not to. Trick is not to piss the wrong people off," she said in a quieter tone. Leo paused for a moment, his face a question. It were almost as though she knew something that he didn't. But how could she? She was just a stranger on a plane, and this was small talk to pass the time as they lingered in the limbo of this uncomfortable travel. Then she casually placed her hand on his thigh, and everything took a sharp right turn. "I find flying so dull." Now she was barely whispering. "Don't you?" Not so much so now, Leo replied. Grace grinned at him. There was something overtly sexy about that grin. It sent a thrill up Leo's spine. The sensation was heightened as Grace's hand stroked higher up his thigh, and he found himself wanting more, wanting so much more. Your business? She asked, her voice stroking the back of his neck in time with her hand on his thigh. Is it dangerous? Very. His own voice felt thick and stilted. He was inexplicably drowsy, but his senses felt heightened. Her touch was electrifying him. I walk on the wild side. He wasn't sure why he'd told her that. Wild side? They weren't even his own worlds. I knew it, she said excitedly, her hand going all the way up his inner thigh and resting exactly where he had hoped it might. You're a very naughty man, aren't you? Naughty? Was he? If anyone else had asked him this question, he'd have put them in their place. But with her, it was different. It was like she was royalty, a bona fide princess, the sort you couldn't refuse. And he wasn't going to refuse her when she was working magic on him with that hand of hers. Couldn't react badly with where her hand was right now. I have been known to be naughty. He struggled to say the words as an involuntary gasp threatened to intermingle with them. In that case, I think you better ask for a blanket. Grace gave him a playful squeeze. She was leaning in towards Leo now. He felt her breath on his earlobe and neck. Sure, he said, and duly obliged. That's better, purred Grace as she spread the blanket over Leo. The armrest was up and out of the way now. This business of yours, it's criminal, isn't it? Can be, Leo replied, as Grace moved closer to him and nuzzled his neck, sending waves of pleasure through him. The anticipation was building, and he was reeling from this turn of events. He was no longer enduring a painful flight. He was enjoying a mile-high tryst. Oh, look, you're bleeding. Her words took too long to sink in. He responded instead to her hand, leaving him and taking his wrist instead. There was a smear of blood, but he hadn't noticed any pain or act that could have caused the slight wound. Here, let me. He watched as she lapped at the bloodied skin on his wrist. However slow he'd been with what she'd been saying, his body responded quickly and fully to this. She was sending waves of pleasure through him, and his imagination was going to the best of places, even before she began kissing and then sucking at his flesh. He'd never known pleasure like it, never realized how sensitive his wrists were. They sat like that for a while, Grace lapping and kissing him as he looked on, Leo doing his best to stifle his moans and hold himself back. The way he was responding to her, it was like his first time, but he had decades of experience to bring to the party. Something so simple as kissing his wrist. Who knew? And if she could have this effect on him as she did this, what further pleasures awaited? He was disappointed when she stopped, resisting the urge to ask her not to cease, putting a hold on begging her for more. Instead, he went for small talk to disguise his blatant need for her. "What do you do, Grace?" he asked, as she slipped her arm around him and drew closer to him. Her hand was wrapped around him now. It felt so good. He barely registered her having undone his belt and trousers, losing his touch, drowning out the dissenting thoughts, going with it. He'd seen plenty of action before today, but not like this, not with a woman like Grace. And she was doing things to him that he didn't know were possible. He wanted her more than any woman he'd ever met, wanted to give himself over to the pleasure he knew she could so readily bestow. Her voice, her presence, it had spoken of this, drawn him in. Now she was fulfilling the promise that was made as soon as they'd taken their seats on this flight. A chance encounter that was blowing his mind to pieces as she stroked him and pleasured him. She answered his question with that voice of hers. "I deal with the naughty boys. I eliminate risks," she breathed into his ear. "And you've been a very naughty boy. Fran Johnstone is not happy with you going behind his back with this deal of yours." His eyes widened in shock, but he barely had time to let the words sink in before her teeth sank into his neck. His back arched, and he wanted to protest, to struggle, but it was already too late for that. Too late for Leo. Grace took her time and enjoyed her in-flight well. These business trips were very lucrative for an assassin with her skills and proclivities, less so for loose cannons like Leo. There's a grizzly on the plane. People are shuffling down the aisle of the plane, scooting one step at a time, shoving things in the overhead compartment, elbowing and kneeing each other as they throw themselves down into their seats. The flight attendants are smiling brightly and saying, "Good morning, good morning, good morning," to each passenger in turn as they enter the plane. The captain is there with them. I take a good look at him. I know this guy, kind of a wimp. That's why I knew this was the right flight. I think his name is Cameron. When I press the barrel of this gun against his head, he'll do anything I say. One man with a gun can do anything. I give him a little wink. I'll see you soon. It's easy to get around airport security when you work at an airport. This is gonna be my final flight. And the final flight for all these people too. I'm not gonna shoot them all. Maybe just a few. Might as well. But most of them are going out with a real bang. Not me though. Gonna shoot myself right before we crash. My seat is 32 of. So here we go, almost there, and I stop. I see it, but I can't. There's... What? No. Yes. There's a goddamn grizzly bear sitting in a seat, buckled in. A woman sitting next to him is feeding him pink bits of something from a bowl. The bear is huge, but somehow fits in the seat like it was custom made. It's sitting straight up in the seat, buckled in. How? What? The woman caught me staring. Ooh, sorry. He doesn't like to be stared at. The bear is staring at me with deep brown eyes, dark brown fur, huge paws, long claws. It starts snorting and moaning, and I shake my head and keep walking to my seat. I look around, and everyone else seems to be fine with this. How did I not see the bear walk onto the plane? Why is no one else freaking out about this? I find 32F, and I look back to the bear, who's a few rows ahead. The bear turns its head and looks back at me. I turn my head away and drop down into my seat. The bear turned around, and the woman next to it gave it another morsel. A man sits down next to me and says, "Hello there. Do you see that?" I said. "Oh yeah, we've got a full plane today. That's good luck, you know." "No, not that. I point. "What? The bear," I said, so loud that a few people turned around and looked at me. "Oh yeah, he's a cute guy, isn't he?" "That's insane," I tried whispering, but I know everyone heard me. Shouldn't be a problem. The guy sits down and starts looking at his phone. Just like that. I look around and see others doing the same. I see people reading books, eating snacks, whatever. Nobody is freaking out over the goddamn grizzly bear sitting in 25B. "Sir, I'll need to place your bag in the overhead compartment," says a flight attendant. "No, this is my carry-on. My gun is in here. Sorry, sir, but new safety procedures say we need all bags placed in the overhead bin for takeoff. Once we reach cruising altitude, you can get your bag." She reaches over to take my bag from my lap, but I hold on to it. "Sir, please," she says with a firm pull. I pull back. She's not letting go. We're having a small tug of war over my neighbor's lap. "Let her have the bag, just doing her job," says my nonchalant neighbor. I let go, and she opened the compartment over my seat. "Oh, we're all full here. Let's see." She's opening compartments down the line, away from me. "Here we are. Sir, I'm placing your bag right here, right above the bear." How did the bear get on here? How did it fit on the plane? Why does the bear have an aisle seat? Why is there a bear on the plane? Why is no one freaking out? She shuts the compartment and walks towards the front of the plane. "We'll be taking off soon. You look nervous, son. Is this your first flight?" asks the man next to me. "No, I've flown lots of times. This was supposed to be the last time. The attendants are doing their usual pre-flight routine of instructing people how to put their seatbelts together and how to put on the emergency oxygen masks. I guess the bear doesn't need any help. Its caretaker is sitting right next to it. The seatbelt fits, so I guess they have a special bear mask too. Wouldn't want the wild animal to get hurt, now would we? Focus. It's just an animal, after all. It'll be the first thing I shoot. I've got a machine gun, so I'll just spray it with a dozen bullets or so. That should keep the rest of the idiots in their seats. Then I'm back in charge. Bear looks calm anyway. Shouldn't be hard. Today is my day. Nothing is going to change this. The pilot tells us on the overhead that we're ready for takeoff. The bear made a low growl, and the woman next to it scratched behind his ears, soothing it. The plane starts moving down the runway. Normally, this part of flying doesn't bother me, but today, I'm gripping my armrests. The acceleration picks up, and the plane's engines get louder. I'm staring at the back of the bear's head, which is completely still, like some damn taxidermy project that had its own ticket. The wheels of the plane leave the ground, and we are in the air. I'm in a window seat, so I turn my head to look out, hoping it will calm me down, knowing that all is going according to plan, except for the bear. All I have to do is get the bag, kill the bear, shoot that bitch that brought him on here too. Maybe a few more people, just for fun. Then up to the cockpit with a hostage on the bad end of the barrel to make my way in. I'll tell the captain that we're making an unexpected detour right into the middle of the nearest city. Right before we crash, I'll shoot myself. We have to wait before we reach cruising altitude. Then I can move about freely. Then we'll have about 30 to 40 minutes before we get close to the nearest big city. Enough time to feel like God before dying. I'm watching through the window, still gripping the armrests. "Looks like you need a drink of water," says the man next to me. I realize my forehead is covered with sweat. "Yeah, I guess I could," I say, wiping my forehead. I look back and see that the goddamn bear is reclining in its seat. Person behind it doesn't seem to mind. Just then, the bear turned around and looked at me. I turned back to the window. Even over the sound of the plane's engines, I can hear the bear smacking its lips, followed by another low rumbling growl, almost like it's annoyed by me. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to fuck up your day. I must have gotten lost in the window," as the next time I looked up, the snack cart was being pushed down the aisle by an attendant. What's the bear gonna have? A cookie? Water? Or Coke? When that cart gets behind me, I'm gonna get up and get over there and grab my bag. I'll take a can of Coke when she gets here. Now she's asking the woman next to the bear if she'll have anything. The woman takes a cookie and a cup of water. The bear got nothing. I guess it's full. Come on, come on. Hurry up. She's taking her sweet time, pushing that cart down the aisle. My jaw is clenched tight, like a bear trap. All right, here she is. Finally. Would you like anything, sir? She asks the man next to me. Yes, a water for myself and for my friend here. No, thank you. I'll have a Coke. Oh, nonsense. You sweating like that? You need a water. 2 waters, please. The woman poured 2 waters, and I gulped mine down in 1 drink before she even left. Would you like another? She asks. No, I want a Coke. She hands me the red can, and I chug half of it. The sugar and caffeine hit my brain like ice water. I put the can down, and the bear is staring at me again. The attendant pushes the cart down to the row behind us. It's time now. The bear is still looking back at me. I'll give it a minute, finish my drink. You know, I had a bear like that when I was younger, said the man next to me. What? Oh yeah, his name was Popper. Great bear. You ever had a bear? No, I fucking haven't. I'm gonna kill this son of a bitch too. Right after the bear. The bear is still staring at me. And now I'm staring back. I finish my can of Coke and crunch it in my hand. I'm in control here. It's time. Now. Right now. Let's go. I unbuckle my seatbelt and stumble across my neighbor's knees, almost falling into the opposite row. A lot of people notice and are now watching me, but the bear is now looking straight ahead, unaware of me. I think it's cool. Just a few steps, open the compartment, and start blasting. This is my day, and nothing is going to screw it up. The aisle seems a mile long, and it's taking all my willpower to pick up my feet for every step. I make it to the compartment, the bear sitting right next to me. I reach up to open the hatch, and, "Excuse me," says the woman with the bear. "Could you hand me my bag? It's in there. I need something from it." "Is it for the bear?" I ask. I didn't mean to, but it slipped. "No, it's just a book for me to read." I can smell the bear. Deep pine woods. Its huge paw is brushing against my leg. It's just the fur touching me, but I see the long claws. I open the compartment, and there's my bag, right in front of hers. One quick draw, and I could shoot the bear. Just unload the whole fucking clip into him and forget the rest. Make my way to the cockpit, and the bear's huge paw falls from the armrest, and the claws scrape my leg. I fall back into someone's lap, with my heart in my throat. I look at the bear, and it's still in its seat, eyes closed, breathing deep. That low rumble, which is louder than the engines. "Oh, sorry about that. He's just sleeping." "Sir, excuse me," says the flight attendant with the cart. She's finished handing out cookies and Cokes, and now wants to go back to the front. With the look on her face, I believe she would run me over if she could. She grabbed the lady's bag and handed it to her and closed the compartment. "I need something out of there," I say. "Yes, sir. I'll..." She stops and nearly falls over her cart as the plane has hit sudden turbulence. I bump into the person sitting behind me, opposite the compartment. "Sir, get back to your seat." "I just need..." "Sir, you need to get back to your seat." The plane bumps and shakes, and now the bear is awake and growling. The woman hands him some pink bit out of a container, which I can now see is fish. Salmon. The bear snacks and smacks, but still makes that growling sound, making an awful mixture of sounds. The attendant has pulled the cart backwards down the aisle, leaving me an open path to my seat. The bear looks at me with salmon hanging from its jaws, so I crawl and stumble back to my seat. "Buckle up. It's a bumpy ride," says the idiot sitting next to me. I'm going to kill the bear, then him, then the attendant, then the woman. I buckle my belt, and still my head slams into the window. People are screaming, kids are crying, the plane is bumping and rattling. The captain's voice comes over the speaker, saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain in your seats. We are experiencing extreme turbulence." The bear is growling and tossing in its seat. The woman tries to feed it more salmon, but the bear isn't having it. He swats away her hand with a huge paw, and the pink salmon goes flying across the plane. The bear tosses and turns and rumbles harder than the plane and breaks free. The goddamn thing has gotten out of its chair. I have to go now. I unbuckle my seatbelt, and the moron next to me says, "You don't want to do that, son." I punch him in the mouth, just so I know I got him one good time before this is over. I'll take this bear down with the rest of them. I brace myself against the seats, and I take small steps with firm feet and make my way to the compartment. The bear is squeezed in the aisle on all fours, bouncing off the seats, but mostly steady, facing away from me. Good. Almost there. I grab the seat it used to sit in, and I open the compartment. I unzip my bag, and I see the machine gun. It's already loaded. All I have to do is grab it and open fire. Never killed an animal before. It's kinda like a bonus. The plane has settled. No more turbulence. Everything is still and smooth, and I hear the bear make a noise. I turn to see it facing me. On all fours, it's half as tall as me. "Oh my, thank you, thank you. Please, help him to his seat," says the woman. He just loses his temper when there's turbulence. I look back to the bear, who's looking at me with deep brown eyes. Just take his paw and help him to his seat. I'd help you, but I hurt my ankle in all the trouble. just take his paw. I don't know why, but I stick out my hand. The bear puts its paw out and softly lights on my palm. It makes some kind of noise that I can't figure out if it's aggressive or friendly. I slowly back up, keeping my eyes on the bear as it walks towards its seat. The bear sits down, and she buckles him in, and the whole plane starts clapping. They're saying, "Aw," and "how sweet," and whatever else. Are you fucking kidding me? The captain's voice over the speaker says, "Ladies and gentlemen, we seem to be in the clear now, but I am asking that you remain in your seats for the remainder of the flight." Thank you, sir. That goddamn attendant again. She appeared like a fucking ghost. Please return to your seat. I'm so goddamn flabbergasted. I don't know what to do. Just whatever. I shut the compartment. I take my seat. The guy sitting next to me is holding his mouth, but pulls his hand down to say, "Good job back there. I forgive you for socking me. We all get a little emotional sometimes under pressure. It takes a brave man to do what you did, risking yourself for that poor animal. I'm sure he appreciates you." I don't know what to say to that. I look out the window and see the big city, so small way down below us. I watch as clouds fill the window and blot out the city with pure white. I look back at the bear, who's looking back at me. I stayed in my seat for the rest of the flight, grabbed my bag, and deboarded the plane. Not one bullet fired. Nowhere to be found. Timothy, sit down and shut up. Don't make me tell you again. But Dad, I want to see how far I can jump. Sit down. But Dad, not here. Not now. Don't do this to me, Tim. The father exhales sharply, pressing 2 fingers to his temple. 3 hours. That's all he's asking for. 3 quiet, uneventful hours from Perth to Adelaide. No screaming kids, no feet kicking his chair, no running up and down the aisles. More specifically, could the one causing havoc please not be his own? Timothy crosses his arms, sulking. Flying is boring. Why couldn't they go somewhere fun, like Hollywood or Africa? Why did it always have to be Adelaide? Grandma would pinch his cheeks, and Dad would sit around drinking port with Grandpa. Their house smelled funny, and now he couldn't even test how far he could jump on an airplane. He shifts in his seat, eyes scanning the rows of passengers ahead. The seatbelt light is off. Maybe if he's quick, the father sighs, pinching the bridge of his nose. Timothy, I swear to God. He turns to his son's seat. It's empty. A second passes. Another. The father blinks. The air feels suddenly thick. He turns his head slightly, expecting to see Timothy crouching in the aisle, giggling. Nothing. His gaze darts to the seats ahead. searching for the flash of a child's movement. His pulse quickens. Tim, no response. The father unbuckles his seatbelt, scanning the cabin. Timothy isn't anywhere in sight. He grips the armrest, forcing a breath through clenched teeth. It's fine. It's a game. He stands up. Timothy, a few heads turn. A flight attendant passing by pauses. "Sir, my son," he says quickly. He's not in his seat. She glances at the empty spot beside him. Perhaps he went to the restroom? No, he wouldn't. Not without saying something. Not without whining about having to go. The father moves toward the nearest lavatory, knocking hard. "Timothy?" No answer. He presses the button. The door pops open, empty. A cold knot forms in his stomach. He checks the other lavatory, then the one at the front, then the one at the back. Nothing. His pace quickens. His breath turns shallow. He pulls open the overhead lockers, searching for... what? A hiding child? He doesn't know. He just knows Timothy isn't in his seat. Timothy isn't anywhere. He weaves through the rows, scanning every face, stopping at every child. No. 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 The flight attendant approaches again, concern in her eyes. "Sir, my son," he says, more forcefully now. "He's missing." A ripple of murmurs spreads through the cabin. Another attendant joins the first. One of them touches his arm lightly. "We'll help you look." Passengers glance up, some confused, others disinterested. A man 2 rows back frowns and mutters, "I didn't see a kid sitting there." The father's head jerks toward him. "What?" The man shrugs. "I mean, I just don't remember seeing a kid. Thought you were alone." The father stares. His vision narrows. His heartbeat pounds against his skull. "What the fuck are you trying to do? Did you have something to do with this?" The man drops his head, regretting getting himself involved. "Sir," one of the attendants says, "please stay calm. Let's retrace everything. Your son was in his seat after takeoff?" "Yes." "And when did you last see him?" "Just now. Seconds ago." His voice is shaking. He doesn't care. "I was talking to him. I turned away for 1 second, and he swallows. He's gone." More passengers are watching now. Some look concerned. Some exchange glances. The father scans every face, searching for suspicion, guilt, anything. His breathing grows uneven. This isn't happening. Someone took him. Someone on this plane has his son. The attendants begin a quiet, methodical search. One asks passengers if they've seen a small boy. Most shake their heads. Some barely look up from their screens. The father doesn't wait. He moves faster, yanking back curtains, peering into crew areas, shoving open every unlocked door. The attendants murmur into radios. The plane feels smaller now, tighter. He searches again and again. Every seat, every row, every corner, nothing. His hands shake. His face is burning. He moves up the aisle, scanning the faces again. Who took him? A woman reaches out gently. Sir, please. Timothy, the father shouts, voice cracking. Heads snap toward him. Timothy, answer me. Nothing. His pulse pounds in his ears. He stumbles down the aisle, knocking against armrests. Tim. His voice is raw now, desperate. Timothy, where are you? He reaches the cockpit door, slams his fist against it. My son is missing. Someone has my son. The attendants pull him back, whispering reassurances that mean nothing. He shoves past them, back down the aisle. He checks the bathrooms again. He knows he already did. He does it anyway. He pulls down tray tables, looks under seats. Passengers murmur. Some watch with unease. Others look away. The man who said Timothy wasn't there stares at him blankly. The father stares back, fists clenching. He opens his mouth. But what does he say? That the man is lying? That his son was here, right here, and now he isn't? That his world is collapsing, and no one understands? Sir? An attendant says softly. Please sit down. The father sways on his feet. His head is pounding. Then, a shift. A sensation. The slight pressure in his gut. They are descending. No, the plane is landing. His breaths turn shallow. He turns toward the window. The ground grows closer. No, no, no. He grips the seat in front of him. His knuckles go white. Timothy is still missing. The wheels touch the runway. The plane slows. The overhead chime dings. Timothy is still missing. The seat belts click open. People stand. Timothy is still missing. The doors open. Light floods in. Timothy is still missing. The other passengers are standing now. The overhead lockers are popping open. Timothy is still missing. They have their bags and pushing past him. Exiting the plane, Timothy is still missing. He is the last one now. Sir, we need you to please exit the aircraft. The authorities have been alerted and are waiting to assist you in the terminal. Timothy is still missing. Where is my son? The road to nowhere. I yawned and rubbed the sleep away from my eyes. Looking around, the flickering lights of the train windows I had gotten so used to were gone, and all I could see were the dim white lights that lined the aisle of the train car. I glanced around at all the empty seats, confused. Why was I here? Why was the train empty? And why wasn't it moving? Confusion overtook me, followed by panic. I shot to my feet and strode to the end of the train car, trying the door at the very end, but it wouldn't budge. I quickened my steps to the other side, my shoes clanking on the metal floor, and tried the sliding door. This one opened like a dream. Excitedly, I stepped out of the train car onto the solid ground I knew would be there, and promptly fell. There was no ground. There was no sky. There was just Nothingness. My heart dropped into my stomach as I lurched downward. And the only thing that saved me from plummeting into that nothingness was the open backpack on my back, caught on the armrest of one of the chairs, still inside. My arms, having felt like they were wrenched from my shoulders, hung there loosely as the straps of my backpack held on to me for dear life. My breath caught in my throat, and my mind raced as I stared out at the blackness before me. How do I get up? I tried to turn to grab the floor of the train car, but a loud tearing of fabric caused me to pause, and my heart thundered in my ears. I waited, my arms refusing to move out of fear. But in one fell swoop, I launched my hands up behind me and hoisted myself back onto the floor of the train car, just as my backpack completely tore open. Panting heavily, back in the safety of the train car, I ripped my backpack off my shoulders and inspected the damage. The top was completely torn, but I didn't care. That stupid backpack saved my life. I threw it back on and stood up, staring out at the blackness before me, holding on to the armrest of a chair just for insurance. There was literally nothing. No one. The silence was so suffocating, I almost wished to hear my heart pounding in my ears again. "Hello?" I called as loud as I could into the void, but there wasn't even an echo, just silence. Suddenly, as if compelled by some outside force, the train car lurched forward. I nearly tumbled into the void again, the only thing that saved me being that armrest I was holding. "What was that? Who's doing that?" I called, but once again, no answer. The train car chugged along slowly, almost at a snail's pace, but I figured that was better than nothing. I closed the sliding door, sick of my inability to stay firmly in the train, and walked carefully to a seat, plopping down into it. What was I doing before I got on the train? I didn't remember. Who was I? I didn't remember. It felt like I'd been created from air and dropped onto this God-forsaken train, surrounded by this God-forsaken nothing. I took the poor, shredded backpack off my shoulders again and searched through it this time, but all I found were some loose-leaf blank sheets of notebook paper. A student, maybe? If I was stupidly disorganized. I desperately tried to search my brain for any clues related to school. Maybe the name of a school I went to, the names of past teachers, the faces of fellow students and friends. I came up with nothing. No matter how much I tried to scour my memories, one unchangeable fact remained. I was stuck on a train car in the middle of the void, heading to nowhere. All I could do was wait, so that's what I did. I waited, and I waited, and waited. I kept myself occupied with my thoughts as I stared out the window, gazing into the darkness. I don't know how much time passed. I had nothing to gauge my bearings on. No watch, no ticking clock. Nothing. The dim lights from the train ceiling flickered for a moment and then went out with a quiet click. And at the same time, the train came to an abrupt halt. I looked away from the window and shot to my feet, wrenched away from my thoughts, and pressed myself against the train wall. I could barely see anything. The dim lights were the only light source in this never-ending blackness. "Hello?" I called out, but my voice broke in my nervousness. There was a small beep, like something about to be announced over an intercom. And all of a sudden, a digital message began scrolling across the top of the train wall in bright red digital letters. Suddenly, as if compelled by some outside force, the train car lurched forward. The train started moving again, abruptly, the force almost yanking me off my feet. And I steadied myself before looking back at the digital red letters. Who's doing this? Who is it? My frustration and stress exploded into my voice, and I stomped angrily away from the wall to stand in the center of the slow-moving train car, bathed by the weak red light of the letters. The digital message continued scrolling, and the letters would reveal a message that would make me rush towards the seats. The train started moving again abruptly, the force almost yanking me off my feet. I didn't catch the rest, desperate to get to a seat. The train did, in fact, start moving forward again. And it was only by the grace of God that I ended up grabbing the armrest of a seat to avoid flying to the floor. Angrily, I stormed to the end of the train and yanked open the sliding door, screaming into the void. "Are you messing with me? What are you trying to do? Why am I here?" I glanced back at the red letters on a whim and saw the following message. The silence was so suffocating, I almost wished to hear my heart pounding in my ears again. Nothing. Absolute silence. And the last thing I saw before tumbling out of the train and into the void were the small red letters forming the words, "There was no ground. There was no sky. Good luck." The quiet before. I bent low over the painting, the tip of my brush dotting at the corner of the landscape. It was just a tree, after all, but the spot of varnish that had welled up and discolored over the years needed to be removed. When the acetone leached into the surface, it peeled back, and my heart clenched. As the varnish removed a layer of paint, it revealed a subtle, dark patch of pigment beneath its surface. I sat back, a chill running through me. Underpainting. Maybe a hidden painting? I held my breath and stripped off my rubber gloves as I leaned back from the canvas. The visible image was a simple landscape, rolling hills and a few meandering roads, the colors muted by age and dust. The sky was a washed-out blue, and the trees on the horizon seemed too far off to be of much importance. It was nothing special, but that was never the point. What mattered now was finding out what lay beneath. I put on fresh gloves and lifted the painting with care. The canvas felt heavier than it should have, and I walked slowly over to the imaging lab. I positioned it carefully on the table, making sure that it was level before placing the X-ray scanner above the canvas. The machine hummed to life, and I stepped back to the desk as the images slowly appeared on the screen. Beneath the visible landscape, buried under layers of thick, muddled paint, was a face. It was likely a woman, as I could see brushstrokes of long hair curling around her face beneath the layers. The image was ghostly, faint, and slightly blurred, but unmistakable. A portrait. The faint outline of her features, her eyes staring somewhere just beyond the frame, sent a shiver through me. She was there, just beneath the surface. I didn't need to look at the X-ray again. I'd seen enough. I grabbed my phone and quickly searched for the artist's name. It was barely anything, just some obscure mentions in art journals, but something about it felt wrong. There had to be more. I spent the next few days buried in the archives. The museum had extensive access to resources on all sorts of artists, but the painting's creator remained elusive. There was nothing concrete about him, just scraps of details on a man who seemed as obscure in life as he was in death. The painting, this painting, felt like a living thing, pulling me deeper into its mystery, one layer at a time. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how much there was to discover. As I attempted to track down her creator, I peeled back the landscape layer by layer, revealing the portrait of a strange, haunting woman. Her pale face was framed by dark, flowing hair that reached her shoulders. Her gaze was distinct, distant, yet her features soft, as though she's looking at something or someone beyond my reach. There was a haunting grace, a quiet calm to her, but an unsettling depth in her eyes. The light in the portrait was soft and diffused, casting a faint glow on her skin and creating gentle shadows under her cheekbones, giving her face an almost ethereal quality. She sat as though she is regal, with a slender curve to her neck, though her pose was rigid and upright. Her gown looked heavy and richly textured, and almost blurred into the darker background. I found myself losing time, focus, and all sense of responsibility to this woman. Time had started to slip away in ways I couldn't explain. Days melted into one another, the world around me a blur as I spent more time with her. But no matter how much I uncovered, there was always a feeling that I was just scratching the surface. I pulled the stack of archived files towards me and sighed, taking another sip of the peach energy drink I'd come to rely on during these long stints of hunting down the elusive painter of the hidden woman. I'd discovered his name was Luigi Diovina. But beyond that, there were mere snippets of his life. An article about his madness toward the end of his life, and a lost last painting commissioned for a baroness. That article had sent a shiver up my spine. Could this be that painting? If so, I'd found a hidden treasure, but the baroness remained unnamed, leaving me with no way to verify who she was. I leaned back in the chair, my eyes falling once more on the image of the woman. I hadn't been able to stop thinking about her. I wasn't the only one noticing the strain. Clara, Jenna, a senior restorer, pulled me aside. "You've got to get back to the other works. The other paintings are falling behind. Victor has been asking about the St. Catherine piece. The museum's losing patience." I nodded, though I couldn't shake my growing unease. "I'll catch up," I murmured, but even I didn't believe it. I couldn't focus on anything else. The painting, the Baroness had started to call her, had started to become the only thing I could focus on. Even when I tried, I found myself returning to the painting, as if it were calling to me. The woman's eyes seemed to follow me wherever I went. The deeper I investigated her, the more she began to consume my thoughts, my every waking moment. The article had come from a dusty file in the back of the local library, one that had been buried on microfiche and stuffed away in a back room somewhere. I'd had to bribe the front desk worker with a box of donuts and a large coffee, so she'd dig it out for me. But once I'd scrolled through 3 years' worth of articles on local auctions, I finally struck pay dirt. Haunted painting sells at auction. Deadly Baroness's portrait said to haunt Diovina's last known work, the headline read, giving much more detail than any other piece ever had. Though the Baroness was still unnamed, the full article mentioned the painter's dying days. Diovina's obsession with his final portrait left him a shadow of the man he once was. Those who knew him said he would often stand in front of the canvas, seemingly lost to time, as though the woman's eyes spoke to him. In his last weeks, it was rumored he painted over the face of the woman. This had to be the painting, but how had it ended up in our archives? Why had he painted over her face? The deeper I uncovered the painting, the more I believed that the woman, her secrets, were pulling me into a vortex of obsession, just as they had Diovina. Clara. My head jerked up, the soft brush in my hand. The Baroness's eyes were inches from mine, her creamy skin slowly being cleaned at my skillful hands. I blinked and sat back, gazing around the room for the source of my name. But no one was around. The office was strangely empty. I stretched my back, leaning slightly over the chair, and stood up to to walk down the hall, empty, and it was dark. Curious, I walked a few steps towards the archives room. "Clara!" I whipped around. No one was there, but the voice had come from my office. I rushed back in, but found only the Baroness staring at me. Why were her eyes fixed on me? Her gaze had moved. Her eyes seemed to be fixed on me, just as obsessed with me as I was with her. As I stepped around the stacks of files, my tools, and other paintings I'd neglected in favor of the Baroness, her eyes followed me around the room. I slowly sat down on the stool I'd left in front of her, sitting eye to eye with her. It was only us in the room, no one else. The next day, I gazed around Vincent's office as he sat in front of me. His arms were crossed over his chest, and the furrow in his brow only deepened as he watched me fidgeting. "Clara," he said, catching my attention. I glanced up quickly, my eyes locking on his face. "I understand that you're passionate about the restoration, but we're running a museum, not a one-woman project. You've been neglecting the other pieces for weeks now. You know how important the St. Catherine piece is. If it isn't ready by the next exhibition, I'll get to it," I said, cutting him off. I blinked rapidly. The St. Catherine piece was complex, but it was just a cleaning job, and since I didn't need to paint anything, I'd be able to finish it quickly. "Clara?" My eyes widened as the familiar, haunting voice called my name. "Do you realize how much time you've spent on this?" Vincent paused, his eyes narrowing as he searched for the right words. "This obsession? Don't ignore me." I closed my eyes and pressed my fingers to my forehead. I forced myself to meet his gaze. "I'll get it done. I just need a little more time." Vincent let out a frustrated sigh, his hands running through his hair. "I need you to refocus. We can't afford this. Not with the exhibit coming up." "Clara!" My head snapped up, but it was just me and Vincent in the room. I glanced down, my heart pounding. His hands were strained, the same rusty red as the Baroness's dress, the splotches covering his fingers and seeping into his nail beds. "Clara," Vincent said sternly, though his voice was also tinged with worry. "You're letting everything else slip." He flicked through his computer and turned it to me, his stained fingers showing CCTV footage of the archives. And, "Is that me?" I asked, gazing at the screen. "Yes. You stood there for an hour like that, Clara. And this is at..." His voice trailed off as he checked the timestamp. His face grew increasingly lined with worry. "The point is, you haven't been yourself. You look like you haven't slept in days, Clara. This isn't you. Go home. Get some rest," he said, sighing as he adjusted the screen back to normal. I stood, and without hesitating, I left his office. "And don't do anything with that painting," he called as I stalked out. But it was calling me. She was calling me. I glanced into the studio from the sliver of a window in the door. Through the frosted glass, I could see a distorted view of the painting sitting on an easel at my workstation. I could see her outline, the delicate slope of her neck, and the blood red of her robes. Suddenly, a shadowy figure moved across the threshold of my door, and I jumped back, startled. I hesitated, struck by fear. Not that someone had broken into my office, but that someone was going to take the Baroness from me. I turned the doorknob, but of course, I'd locked it, and I could see her right there. She was right there. A chill swept through me, and I shivered, closing my eyes as I dropped my hand from the door. When I got home, I was a little shocked to see Ethan on the couch, anxiously texting people. "You're home?" I said, dropping my keys and messenger bag by the door and taking off my coat. He gazed up at me and tilted his head. "You're home," he said worriedly. There was no warmth to his voice, as if he was put out with me. I furrowed my brow. "Yeah, Vincent sent me home early, said I looked tired." "What, early?" "It's 9 p.m., Clara," Ethan said, putting his phone down. I blinked and looked out the window, my stomach clenching. He stood up, moving over to me as he noted the look of confusion on my face. "What's going on, Clara?" he asked quietly. He reached out to rest his hand on the small of my back, but I pulled away, a feeling of overwhelming anxiety rolling through me. "Nothing. I can't." I shook my head and then glanced up at him. "I can't remember what I did. Vincent sent me home at 11? I said, my stomach twisting again. I leaned into the kitchen counter, holding it tightly. Ethan looked shocked, his lips parting to calculate the math. "Okay, it's fine. We'll figure it out. You've just been stressed with the exhibition coming up, and all the work," he said, rubbing my back gently. I shook my head, reaching for my bag and rifling through it. My fingers crossed over something gold and metallic. I furrowed my brow and pulled out the ring of archive keys. It jingled in my hand, and I closed my eyes, shaking my head. "Why do you—" Ethan began, but I cut him off. "I must have just shoved them in my bag. It's fine," I said, taking a deep breath. I put the keys gently back into my bag and took out my phone again, checking the time. "It's late. I'm late. I came home late. I'm just tired," I said slowly, rationalizing things to myself. "Okay, do you want to just call it a night? Get some rest, maybe a shower?" Ethan asked. I saw his nose crinkle from the corner of my eye. Did I stink? My jaw twitched as I bit my cheek. "Yeah?" I nodded, but couldn't help the feeling that Diavina's Baroness had something to do with the loss of time. I closed my eyes, and Ethan brushed my hair back from my face. "Okay," I said, pulling away from him. He looked sad, but didn't move towards me as I stalked off to our bedroom, my phone held loosely in my fist. I stepped into the hallway leading to our bedroom, the light from the kitchen spilling across the dark-toned wood behind me. As I stepped towards the darkened bedroom, I felt a drift, and my head felt heavy. I stopped at the doorway and lifted my head. My fingers paused on the light switch. The room glowed with the dull orange light from the street lamp that streamed through the curtains. It made for an eerie sort of atmosphere. But that's not why I paused. My eyes were locked on the full-length mirror across the room from me. Its glassy surface should reflect only the bed, maybe the edge of my body, not the full shadow that stood ominously facing me. I blinked, frozen in place as I stared at the shadow. It almost pulsated, its shoulders hunched. It wasn't exactly shapeless, but it didn't have any defining features. Still, it felt familiar in a way it shouldn't have been. My fingers twitched, brushing the edge of the light switch. I took a shaky breath. I flipped the switch, and the figure was gone as soon as light flooded the room. The mirror was empty. My chest clenched painfully, and I leaned against the door frame. Slowly, I flicked the light again. There she was, dominating the mirror, a black mass. But I knew her. I knew who she was. I flicked the light on again, and she was gone. But just as quickly, I flicked it off, and she was there. Panic rose like a bile in my throat. Distantly, as if underwater, I could hear Ethan calling to me, but his words were lost. Because the Baroness was calling me, her voice was rising in a screaming ring in my ears. I trembled with fear as I stepped towards the mirror, towards her. My mind fought my body as deep, panicky breaths burst from my chest. As I stepped up to the mirror, the shadow swelled and blossomed, the shrill screams rising to fever pitch in my ears. A hand wrapped around my shoulder just as the mirror shattered. It's with great pleasure that we present the final restored work of Luciano Diovina, the Baroness. Its beauty belies its tragic past, and we are proud to display it as a memorial to our departed co-worker. Vincent held the champagne glass aloft, then took a sip and stepped down from the podium. Beside him, the Baroness had been artfully restored, her colors vibrant, her skin creamy, her robes deep and gory slash of blood red. She looked almost youthful, brought back to life at Clara's skilled hands. It's a shame. An older woman stands next to a younger one, both eyeing the Baroness and the in memoriam plaque that had been hung next to her frame. The younger one nods, glancing nervously at the portrait. It's tragic. But did you hear about what happened with her boyfriend? I mean, the portrait, sure, it's gorgeous, but I heard it was bad. They glance at the painting. Like gruesome. Like she was obsessed? They cut off, clearly unsure how much to say. The older co-worker's voice drops even lower. Obsessed doesn't even cover it. But you didn't hear it from me. It's a horrible end, though. They each sip their champagne, the younger one shivering as if she said too much. The older glances down at her watch. Come on. The presentation. We're late. It's only the beginning of trouble. As I sit on the uncomfortable train seat, blankly staring out of the window, I feel the heat wash over me in an instant. Breath 1, breath 2, breath 3. It's okay. I can do this. Trying to stay calm and relaxed, I look away from the window, starting to feel dizzy from the speed we pass the trees with. You've done this before, I say to myself as a pep talk. Just because it's different setting doesn't mean you can't do it. There is only one problem. If it goes south, I won't be able to escape for another 3 hours of that train ride. I have to execute the plan perfectly to the last step to make sure I will get away with it. In moments like this, I swear at myself for choosing to do that specific line of work. I'm still a beginner. I am still nervous and anxious about the jobs, even though my mentor tries to convince me it will get easier and more natural. I let out a huff and smile at that thought. What a messed up world it is to get used to doing something so awful. I personally don't have a choice. I need to do this and clear the society from disgusting and horrible people. My eyes travel down to my backpack, trembling slightly from the train movements, filled with the tools I will need for this specific job. The top zip is open, and the sun faintly glints in body of the syringe I brought, the tool for Plan A. If all goes well, I won't have to travel too far down the alphabet to finish the job. But I prepared myself for many possibilities and outcomes. I push my head back onto the headrest and close my eyes, breathing in the dusty smell of the carriage. A quiet conversation of the couple 2 rows ahead of me reaches my ears, and I focus on their words to calm my nerves. It's hard to tell what the topic of their exchange is. All I can make out from it are words like secret, promise, disaster, and truth. The nosy part of me wants to move closer and listen in, but the rational part of me rejects the idea, bringing my focus back to my assignment. I should not distract myself with anything until the job is done. and I can get off the train. My phone buzzes in my pocket, and I take it out to see my mentor's name on the screen. Yes, I answer quietly, looking around for any other passengers that could be in the earshot. What's the update? His low and raspy voice sounds in my ear, and a shiver travels down my spine. I will approach the target in 8 minutes, I reply, and saying it out loud must activate some more anxiety in me, because my leg starts bouncing and fingers start fidgeting with the seam of my jeans. Keep me in the loop, he says, and hangs up. I take one last deep breath and stand up, grabbing my backpack and closing the zip. Here we go. Slowly, I make my way towards the front carriage. The first class one I don't have a ticket for. You have to be confident when walking past, but not too confident. It brings attention. Easy. I enter the carriage and quickly scan the faces I can see for my target. I notice him at the table the furthest away from me, so deeply interested in whatever he is typing on the laptop that I can sense it will be easy to execute my plan A. He has got gray hair with some black streaks still running through. The suit he is wearing looks expensive, perfectly tailored to his broad shoulders, but slim figure. He has got a clean shave, but the eyebrows he is furrowing are thick and badly unshaped. Luckily, he looks exactly like the picture I was given. The fact that he has a laptop on the table and a drink next to it is a slight inconvenience. I wouldn't want to damage his laptop in the first part of the process, as he may not be as forgiving for me to move to the second stage of the plan. My movements have to be even more careful now. I cannot afford to make a mistake here. I shuffle my backpack and tilt it to the right side, which is where the tables are. As I slowly make my way towards the end of the carriage, I intensely calculate the angle I have to use to not cause too much trouble. My target's laptop is by the window side of the table, as is he, still furiously typing on the keyboard. His wine glass is placed to his right, almost at the edge of the table, which means my best move is to knock it away from him and his laptop. I swallow hard, take another deep breath, and head to the door that lead to the next carriage. As I am about to open it, I turn to my right and push his glass off the table. Oh my goodness, I am so incredibly sorry, sir, I say nervously, trying to keep my voice slightly higher pitched than my natural one, and I take some tissues out of the side pocket of my backpack. He swears and closes his laptop. How the hell can you be so clumsy? He's angry. I can hear it in his voice. It must have been a nice glass of wine. But then he looks at me, the low cleavage of my blouse, the long and wavy brown hair barely covering anything, and he smiles. The frustration from his face is gone. Sir, please, I will buy you a new drink. I promise. I mumble, still pretending to be stressed over this situation. Ah, darling, please don't worry. It's just a liquid. When I'm done wiping off the seat opposite him, I throw the tissues in the bin and head for the bar, leaving my backpack innocently on the seat by the window. As I walk away, I make sure to swing my hips with the movement to attract more of his attention. With the wine replacement in my hand, I walk back to the table and smile innocently at my target. He smiles back at me, probably thinking he got lucky I came across him. I know what he does when no one is looking, to what atrocities he lowers himself when he is not pretending to be a highly respected businessman. And I also know that my silly outfit and clumsiness made him incredibly happy. Wipe this smile off your face, you monster. You have no idea what's coming. I sit on the bench I just wiped off and push my backpack under the table, right by my legs. My name is Cassie, I say, and gently bat my eyelashes at him. I hope I didn't spill any wine on your gorgeous suit or very expensive-looking laptop. I chuckle nervously, waiting for his reaction. Well, Cassie, I think you just got lucky. Nothing seems to be damaged. I look at the table behind the laptop. Actually, there may be a little left here. Please, let me... I lean to my backpack under the pretense to get the tissues, and with them, I take out the syringe and place it on my lap. After wiping the invisible stain off the table, I smile at my target again. Thank you for being so understanding. Of course. Before he says anything else, I stab his thigh with my unassuming weapon, and his eyes open wide. What did you just do? Shh, I say in my normal voice, and watch him slowly drift away. Have a nap, sir.